Hello and welcome to Courageous Conversations.
We're here to talk honestly about race, faith, and what it really means to love our neighbor at all costs.
Each and every episode, we are going to sit down with friends and leaders from across Kansas City to share stories. We're going to ask hard questions and we'll laugh a little bit along the way.
To unite people, unite neighborhoods, and eventually unite KC. Let's jump into today's conversation.
Well, hello. Good afternoon. Good morning, good evening, wherever you are. You have tuned into another podcast of Courageous Conversations. And I can't wait to introduce Gary, who is my co-host, who's going to introduce our guest today.
Right. Well, Don Lewis, we're glad you're here.
It's good to be here.
Yeah, we'll come back to you and let you tell more about yourself.
Sure.
I can hardly wait for our audience to meet you. But let me just say, if you're joining in, that we're glad you're here. And so you may want to tap subscribe, tap the bell if you're on YouTube, and then like and share these courageous conversations. But most of all, we hope that you'll have them. Mm-hmm. You'll have them with others. So, Don, I've had the privilege of knowing you for 2 decades plus.
Sure.
I appreciate so much your influence in Kansas City and all the things that you've been a part of. You've been a part of ministry. You've been a part of business. You've been a part of mentoring, civic work. And I can't wait for our audience to hear more about you. So let me just pitch it to you, and you take a moment to introduce yourself, and then let's talk about the things that we have in common that we desire for people to find harmony among race, culture, backgrounds, even politics. We can hope and pray.
Oh, no.
And tell them why you're here.
Okay. Well, I'm Don Lewis, and I've had the privilege of being a pastor here in the KC metropolitan area since 2001. I actually arrived in August of 2001, just a few weeks before 9/11. The significance of that is I was the chaplain at Dulles Airport.
Oh, wow.
And I was the first full-time chaplain at Dulles. The concept of airport chaplains was just being introduced around the world, and I became the first chaplain there, and that was my full-time position. I was also an associate pastor at a church called Shiloh Baptist Church, and the FAA requires that airports have drills, and the drills that we were required to have in preparation for a crisis were rather dramatic, because they actually hired individuals to portray grieving parents whose children had were killed in a crash of some kind, and these people are laying on the floor in the airport and they are wailing. And my job was to go to them and work with the Red Cross and provide support and services for them. And so there's a going away party that was given to me when I announced that I was moving to Kansas City, Missouri. And so the various airport managers, American Airlines manager as an example, United Airlines manager would attend that, and that literally did happen. And so saying goodbye, we had great relationships, and there was a lady at the party as well that I met for the first time. She was an employee at the airport. Turns out she would be on the plane, the American Airlines plane, as well as you have the American Airlines manager. He wasn't on the plane, but he was the manager of American Airlines there. And the plane was the one that crashed into the Pentagon.
Oh, my goodness. Wow.
The woman lost her life, of course. I had just seen her a few weeks earlier. And I remember meeting her, and I remember talking with her. And, of course, I was a friend of the manager of American Airlines. And so that day, 9/11, was quite traumatic and dramatic for me. I called back to my office later in the week and asked the individual who took my place, "How are you doing? What's going on?" And he says, "Don, I haven't been home, number one.
Wow.
And number two, all I've done, is memorial services and counseling. That's all I'm doing."
Wow.
How sad.
That was impacting, very, very impacting. A lot of lives were lost, as we know so well. The nation was impacted. But I became pastor of a church in Shawnee, Kansas. At that time, it was called Full Faith Church of Love. It's now called Cross Points Church.
I remember that's where I met
Yes.
you. Yeah.
And so I pastored there as lead pastor for just under 12 years. And at that time, I requested that my elders allow me to become an associate pastor. And that sounds strange. I'm a lead pastor, yet I want to become an associate pastor. What I wanted was to become a community pastor.
Okay.
I wanted to get involved with the community, and I couldn't do that as a lead pastor because of my responsibilities.
Right.
Yeah.
They agreed to that, and the missions pastor became the lead pastor. His name is David Jones. He has done and is doing a great job.
He is. I've met him. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was then I got involved with the fire department as a chaplain with the fire department in the city of Shawnee. I got involved with the police department. I began to train pastors. Several other pastors and we created a training program for pastors to become chaplains. I got involved with the school system, public school system, because of the program that you, Gary, were involved with in caring for kids.
Right.
And I became a mentor at Lindbergh Elementary in Wyandotte County. And I loved as it worked, getting my hands dirty with the community.
Yeah.
I began to work with the mayor of Shawnee, and amazing things were done. I didn't know the opportunities were so great and so vast. It was like the city of Shawnee just flung the doors wide open, and they didn't have the inhibitions I assumed that they would have concerning a pastor. I remember one time there was Caring for Kids had a luncheon, and they had invited not only school teachers, but also school principals and superintendents of schools, more than one school districts. And I was asked to speak that particular day. And one of the things I said to the crowd there that had attended, I says that we, Caring for Kids, we are not going to be proselytizing your children. We're not going to take advantage of the fact that you've allowed us to come into the schools, and when you're not looking, we're going to proselytize them.
Right.
That's not our intention at all. I raised 4 kids in the public school system myself, and when I sent them to school, I didn't expect them to come home and hear that they were going to go to hell if they didn't accept the Lord.
Right.
That was my job primarily as a parent, and also to supplement my job, they went to Sunday school.
Yeah.
Okay, but I expected them to come home from the public school with the understanding that 2 + 2 is 4.
There you go. Good education.
Yeah, and what a verb is,
Right.
and what have you. And I said to them, what we provide is influence. We want to provide. We want to make sure these children understand lying is not acceptable behavior, or rage, assaults, aggressive behaviors. Those are things that we are going to address and provide what we will call godly influence, but we're not going to introduce that to the school system as such. But that is what we're doing, and I reassure them we're not out to proselytize the children. We are out to influence them in ways that reflects acceptable behavior and ways of solving conflict. And I'm fascinated with how the school system just opened its doors to us and invited
You
so
showed
many
up as a
people.
good Samaritan or a good neighbor.
Yes, exactly.
More than a pastor,
Right.
so to speak.
Exactly. In fact, at Lindbergh, I requested that they call me Mr. Lewis, but the principal and the teachers insisted, no, we want them to call you Pastor
Interesting.
Lewis. That was interesting to me
Yeah.
because I figured it was Pastor Lewis is too religious. But they said, no, you are Pastor Lewis, and they'll call you as such.
Well,
But I had a
Pastor-
great time, though. Excuse me.
No, go ahead.
It was just a great time mentoring, particularly boys, in the public school system. As part of my passion is to influence boys because boys become men,
Oh, boy.
and
Yeah.
that should be good news, but it may not be.
Yeah.
Looking at the trends that we see today. It's also another factor that is important to me is that I think boys are misunderstood. I really do. There's this phenomena called kinesthetic learning, where a person learns by doing. You have visual learning, you have auditory learning, you also have kinesthetic learning. Generally speaking, a lot of boys are kinesthetic learners.
yeah.
Girls tend not to be. I will never forget Miss Larson, my fourth grade teacher. I was introduced to her, and she immediately explained to me, and she pointed to this large book and says, "You're going to have to read this entire book this year." And the book looked like it was something that Aristotle would have written, in grad school. I mean, the size of that book was just intimidating to me. Mr. LaRue in the third grade understood that I was a different kind of learner, and he worked with me. He used flashcards, other methods that got me out of my seat and got me involved with the process of learning.
Yeah.
And I excelled. By the time I left the third grade, I was convinced I was a learner.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, in my educational process, the third grade and the fifth and sixth grades were phenomenal. Mr. Watanabe, Bob Watanabe, Japanese gentleman, was my fifth and sixth grade teacher. And as I mentioned, Mr. LaRue is my third grade teacher. I'm not anti-female teachers by any stretch of the imagination, but there are boys need to have male exposure in their educational process. And everyone knows that fact that our educational system primarily is made up of women. But I was fortunate enough to have a third grade teacher who was a man and a fifth and sixth grade teacher. And by the time I left elementary school, literally I was recognized as the most improved student in the entire school.
That's amazing.
And I attribute that to my teachers, Mr. Watanabe and Mr. LaRue. And it was fascinating how they impacted me and influenced me for my educational process, through my educational process. So I still talk about them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to Shanghai you for
Sure.
a question because it was what we were talking about. And then you started mentioning school and it prompted me.
Sure.
And then I'll let Gary kind of lead the way.
Sure.
But you grew up in a unique situation in the California public school systems, and it exposed you to something that I feel like is foundational. I mean, if I could send anybody to a boot camp, it's not necessarily that I would send them to California, but I want them to have your experience. Why don't you
Right.
talk about that a little bit?
My experience was multicultural.
Mm-hmm.
I did not realize that my experience was unique. I grew up around Latinos. I grew up around Asians. I grew up around Filipinos, as well as whites and blacks. And so I didn't know anything else other than that. I assumed that was the norm in the United States of America. And so when I left California to relocate to pastor, I started pastoring in California, and it was an integrated church.
Okay.
It was the most integrated church I'd ever seen up until that point in time. I mean, there were Chinese people in this congregation. There were Japanese. There were Latins, of course, and the list goes on, and whites and blacks. And I'm one of 4 pastors in this congregation. And great time. I mean, we would be worshiping, as an example, and we're singing this song, and of course we're singing in English, and then we break off into Spanish. I mean, the words would be on the screen. And the whole congregation is just saying these words with the same tune we had been singing in English.
Yeah, right.
And that was just very normal. And we're having a great time. And then we sent a missionary out to Hong Kong. And it was Dennis Balcom, and who has done a phenomenal job there in the Orient, and Hong Kong and China. We had Chinese pastors that we had relationships with in Oakland, California. And then we had Latino pastors. And so I didn't realize, I thought this is the way America is.
Yeah.
And in my naivety, I was wrong.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Well, how do we get to more of that diversity, inclusion, and kind of a welcoming, good neighbor idea? Maybe if someone didn't have your background, how would they still do that in today's world?
Well, the answer has to do with this, is that I can't explain to you why my parents did what they did, but my parents, in raising me and my siblings, when I was around 8 years of age, we started, prior to that, we were going to an all-black church.
Okay.
Up until around 8 years of age. And around 8 years of age, we started going to a church that was predominantly white, but there were other black families as well. Now, why we did that, I do not know.
Mm-hmm.
And all the other church affiliations we had as a family, they were integrated. Not that we had a lot of others, but that one church particularly, and it was a very positive experience. The pastor was white, and he was known for showing up at people's homes, parishioners' homes, unannounced.
Oh.
And so,
There you go.
and this is a brave man, but he would show up, and next thing you know, he's sitting at the dinner table, and we're having dinner, and his guy is taking keen interest in each person in the family, particularly the kids, asking how we're doing in school, what's going on, do we play ball, what have you. And he became very dear to our family.
Wow.
Very, very dear. And so at the age of 14, I attended a class that his wife was teaching, and it was for preparation for water baptism.
Okay.
And but I wasn't saved. I didn't get saved until 2 years later.
Mm-hmm.
Now, by that time, the pastor had passed away, and his wife had gone to the mission field. And but I understood clearly that what salvation meant. And at the age of 16, Halloween night, I gave my life to Christ.
Halloween. Wow.
Halloween night of all nights.
Mm-hmm.
And I attribute that to Grace Sherman, the pastor's wife, because of the way she explained the plan of salvation.
And were
at
they
14.
a white couple? Or
They were a white couple.
Mm-hmm.
They were a white couple. And so I assumed that becoming a Christian, I assumed that there's only two kinds of people. Now, I hadn't thought this through, but there was an assumption of mine. There's saved and unsaved.
Mm.
Now, that's a very important point. I assumed that there were only two kinds of people, saved and unsaved. I knew about all the ethnic groups and what have you, the races and cultures. But after it's all said and done, my assumption was that what the New Testament is talking about is two kinds of people. Either you're saved or unsaved. It was after salvation that I began to run into racism.
Mm.
And I remember one time a bunch of us, young people, we're teenagers, and we're old enough to drive, and we decided to go visit a particular church in a city called Alameda, which is an island just across a small body of water from Oakland.
Right.
And so we attend a midweek service, and I didn't realize I was the only black person. If you had said to me, well, how many blacks are with you? I'd have to think and count. But at the bottom line, I was the only black person. But I'm with my buddies, my friends,
Right.
and we're enjoying each other. And we didn't have any racial problems.
Right.
So we take our seat, and we are experiencing the worship service, singing away and worshiping the Lord. And then there's time for, before the preacher gets up, this lady stands and she's making announcements. And then she says that we want to welcome our colored brother.
Oh.
I'm looking around. What's she talking about?
What color is he?
Yeah. And she said, we want to welcome our colored brother. We're so glad he's with us. And perhaps he'll sing us a song before the service is over, because all colored people can surely sing.
Don, she didn't say that.
I'm afraid she did.
Wow.
I was so embarrassed.
Right.
Yeah.
Good Lord. And I wasn't trying to stand out. I was just trying to worship. And she talks about this colored brother all of a sudden. And then the plot thickened.
Oh.
Not that evening.
I thought that was
that was the point.
bad
That was
enough.
it.
Yeah.
Well, what I mean by the plot thickened is what happened as I continued to visit churches with my friends. I visited a church in the city of Fremont, which was about a 20-minute drive.
Sing?
No, I did not sing. I did not sing. Thank God. I didn't want to prove her wrong.
See, that's what, the Henri Ray would have got up, because I sing off key and do all the things. And
The
then
last time you say all
they just said,
colored people
okay,
can
yeah. She said, all right, I take it all back.
I'm about 17, 18 years of age, and there is a church in Fremont, California that I was visiting, and I was very, very moved. The preaching was impacting. I sensed the Spirit of God there. Very, very moving. And I literally, as I visited a couple of times, they were having a series of meetings, and I literally debated with myself, maybe this is the church I needed to join. But there were two factors. It was a 20-minute drive, which is a distance, and so it's not a neighborhood experience. And number two, I noticed I was the only black person there. And I remember distinctly saying to man alive, do I really want to do this? I don't want to be the only one.
Mm-hmm.
I'm accustomed to integration.
Right.
And I decided that the preaching was that good that I needed to sacrifice. And so I I attended on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
I joined a Sunday school class, and I just made that decision. My best friend, who was white, came to me and said to me, because she had attended, and notice it was a she, and she had attended there, and she was my girlfriend, she's my best friend. And she said to me, you don't need to be going back there anymore. I said, what do you mean? She said, I talked to the preacher at a talk. And the preacher said this. The preacher wanted me to disassociate myself from you.
Really?
And the preacher said that the only reason I was showing up at that church was to get a white woman.
Oh, gosh.
He went on to say that a black man...
Sorry.
A black man will do anything to get his hands on a white woman.
Wow.
I was sitting in my Volkswagen when she told me this, and I remember looking out, thinking, that's what they think? And obviously they didn't want me there.
I'm so sorry.
I was so devastated.
Yeah.
I was beyond tears.
Mm-hmm.
I was embarrassed.
Yeah.
And I was just humiliated and devastated. And to think that I had spent time debating with myself, should I go to this church? And I had concluded that I needed to go there because I was benefiting from, I was being fed.
Mm-hmm.
I was being fed. And I'm a teenager.
Yeah.
It is one of the most significant
Yeah.
points in my entire life, hearing those words.
Yeah.
My friend was angry.
Of course. Yeah.
And I was devastated. And it marked me.
Yeah.
It marked me. And so, I go to school and go to college. And in 1974, I start pastoring. I was one of 4 pastors in this church. And, but I was marked.
Yeah.
I found
and
myself
I just
not
add
trusting.
that I'm so sorry. I think that's
Yeah.
unjust.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's shaming.
Yeah.
And it's really the work of the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
And so disappointed when I see people doing that to anyone else. I'm really sorry about that.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Don, often when I share my story about my upbringing here in Kansas City and some of the things I've gone through, almost 100% of the time people ask me, well, how is it that you ended up not being bitter?
Mm-hmm.
And so I have that same question for you. What kept you from being bitter and as a matter of fact, rising to prominence here in Kansas City to where you're a proponent of, racial unity and harmony?
Right.
There is this theological concept. It's called redemption.
Mm-hmm.
And God will take even evil and use it for good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In 2 Corinthians chapter 1, it says, beginning in verse 3, in so many words, I'm paraphrasing, that He will comfort us in the midst of our crisis.
Mm-hmm.
He'll comfort us in the midst of our pain and devastation. And ultimately, through His comfort, we will be transformed if we're able to respond properly, to become agents of comfort to others with the comfort that we've been comforted with by God.
Yeah.
And that is what has happened. The famous words, The enemy meant it for evil,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
but God meant it for good.
Right.
That's my only answer. See, part of the challenge that I endured, and beyond that, there were other instances and situations and accusations and what have you that I've endured. And part of it has to do with this. In my naivete, I believed that there were only two kinds of people.
Mm-hmm.
And I derived that from the New Testament, the saved and the unsaved. And then you look at the book of Revelations, and it tells us about the various racist, ethnic groups that'll be at the throne of God.
That's
worshiping.
one of my favorites.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating. One writer talks about the fact that he thinks that not only are the ethnic groups going to be there, but they'll be there in their cultures. And,
Or maybe dressed like they would have dressed, or
exactly.
something like that.
Yeah, and they'll have their cultural characteristics as well. And all of us have different cultures. But by then, we will have learned that your culture is not to intimidate me. And the fact that we're different doesn't mean that one's better than the other.
Right.
Right.
And so I look at that. I came up during a time when it was a well-known statement that the most segregated hour of the week was 11 o'clock Sunday morning.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I can tell you who made that statement. Adam Clayton Powell was a politician out of New York. Then you also have the statement that the church was the most segregated institution in America. And I began to think about that. 11 o'clock Sunday morning, that's when people go to church. And by, I'm thinking about, it wasn't my experience, but for the most part, white folk went to white churches, black folk went to black churches, Latinos went to Latino churches, Chinese churches. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But isn't it interesting that the one institution that's supposed to be used to transform the world,
That's right.
the one institution that's to be used to normalize our differences and to help us to understand the beauty of each other's cultures is the institution that is opposed to it. I mean, I've scratched my head.
Yeah, we've talked about it on this podcast.
We have.
How strange.
It is. I agree.
Several years ago, I was giving a presentation here in Kansas City. It was a crew gathering and training, and it used to be called Campus Crusade for Christ. They call it Crew now. And I was giving a presentation, and I made a statement that really, in a sense, shocked me, but it was profound. I said this, and they were all young people, college-age kids I'm talking to. I said, I grew up during the Civil Rights era, and I asked myself the question, where were the evangelicals when the churches in the South not only were segregated, but when there was crisis? I said, people argue about, well, was Dr. Martin Luther King an Orthodox believer or what have you, and all that, and the issue is that the majority of the leaders in the civil rights movements were preachers, majority of the believers. And where were the evangelicals?
Right.
What could have happened if the evangelicals had stood up and declared, these are my brothers in Christ, and these are my sisters in Christ, and we are not going to tolerate the abuse that has become normal and the atrocities, because the distinctive is, are you saved or unsaved? It isn't, are you black or are you brown? It isn't that you eat certain foods. The distinctive in life has to do with salvation, the changing of the heart. And if, in fact, the Bible is true concerning, if any man be in Christ, is a new creation, old things have passed away, all things are made new. If it is true that the person who accepts Christ right now becomes my brother, and if it is true that our relationship is going to have an eternal factor, that may not be the case between me and biological family members. If it is true, what is wrong with us? What happened to us? How could we have been so hoodwinked?
Oh, it is. It is true, brother.
Yes.
You know, Martin Luther King in his letter from a Birmingham jail.
Yes.
You know, that is one of the most convicting
It is. Yes.
letters I've ever read. I think every pastor should read that.
I couldn't agree with you more.
If they didn't sign off on what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was saying, they probably shouldn't be in the ministry.
Yeah.
Right.
But he was calling that very thing out.
Yes, he was. He was. And of course, it was in that statement that he basically said it isn't the ravenous, angry, sword-wielding racist that concerns him. What concerned him was the evangelical, nominal Christian who simply sat back and did nothing.
Yeah, we talked about that here too.
And said nothing.
Yeah, the passivity.
Yes.
And how that we can take a pass or we think we can sit out sometimes on a certain thing.
Exactly.
Instead of waiting in.
You know, Gary, we should probably, in our resources on the website, put that letter out there so that people can see that and they can experience just the truth of and the impact of that letter.
Yes,
it
is very impactful.
You know, Dayton Moore, who was really one of the key founders for Unite KC.
Yes.
He's famous for saying, this isn't a black and white issue.
Yes.
This is a right and wrong issue.
Yes, it is.
It's a good and evil issue.
It is well stated.
And I think that's a really good way to frame it.
That's so well stated.
We have to be able to grow past, you know, the maybe the environment that we grew up in, good or bad, because you grew up in an environment that prepared you well for diversity. I did too.
Yes.
There's a lot of people who didn't.
Yes.
So if they find themselves in this place now, you know, what do they do? And we would like to think one of the reasons why we have Unite KC, why we have a podcast, is just to address these kinds of things for the person who wants to maybe dip their toe in the water before they have a knee-deep conversation or jump in the deep end. This maybe helps them to think some new thoughts or see it from a different perspective.
You know, I had several situations where they were called, I guess I call them rude awakenings in part of my process. So I would have white friends who would want me to meet their pastors. And these friends were friends. These friends, we got along fine. We worked together. I think about a guy, I worked with him. We were both employed by the same company. And he took me by his church. He wanted me to meet his pastor. And so my friend was white. His pastor's white. And shake the pastor's hand. And immediately the pastor says to me, I got a problem with your people.
Wow.
We weren't even talking about anything. I mean, we just met. We literally had just met.
Wow.
And he says to me, I got a problem with your people. And this one particular pastor, he was very angry because there was this gospel group called the Walter Hawkins Singers.
Oh,
and they,
who doesn't know them?
And he popularized the song "Oh Happy Day." In fact, "Oh Happy Day" was on a rhythm and blues station by this time. It crossed over from gospel. And but think about the lyrics, "Oh Happy Day, when Jesus washed my sins away." This pastor said to me, and these singers have the audacity to have that gospel song on a secular station. I have a problem with your people.
Wow.
And he's using the term "your people," which implies that I guess they're not his people.
Right.
But arguably, I thought it was kind of cool that you have a gospel song
I did too.
Talking about the blood of Jesus Christ. He washed your sins away on secular stations.
And they didn't put it on there. It just
became popular.
Yeah, just crossed over.
It bothered him, and it was because of those people, your people.
Wow.
I would meet another pastor.
By the way, there were a lot of white congregations who loved that song.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That's right. That's right. It was big time.
You're right.
Yes.
Then there was the time pastor, I meet him for the first time. I'm glad to meet the guy. And then he goes on immediately, doesn't ask me how my family's doing, doesn't ask me how the kids are. He said, I got a problem with your people down there. Those preachers abandoning the gospel, fighting for civil rights. And here they are out there marching and carrying on. And he went on to say, everything was fine until this protest.
Oh, my goodness.
Everybody was happy. Everything was fine. And I'm looking at this guy as if he had just come from Mars. Where have you been? What do you mean everything was fine? And why aren't you down there with them?
Right.
Why aren't you praying? Why aren't you in support of people not being lynched and beaten and incarcerated? Why aren't you concerned about your brothers having the freedom that you enjoy and take for granted?
The blindness to believe that everything was fine.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he should have just tagged on the other two words. Everything's fine for me.
Yeah.
But now I can see by the old clock on the wall that our time is up, but I am not going to let you get out of here without, I mean, you should come back probably once a month because you have a lifetime of stories and inspiration. But I hear about this thing about you riding around in a tank with Oliver North.
Yes.
I've got to hear that story.
Okay. I'm in Washington, D.C., spent 13 years, part of a church planting team in D.C., and I was working on impacting young people in the streets of D.C. Crack cocaine had just been introduced,
boy.
and it was spinning out of control. And I'm a part of a ministry there where we're reaching out to young people, and the Oliver North story, of course, is well known for those of us that are old enough to remember. Young people don't know what I'm talking about, by the way. But
We're shaking our
We know.
heads.
Yeah, right. So Oliver North was assigned to our organization by Judge Gerhard Cassell, and it was a legal issue where he was going to be working off community hours through our not-for-profit program. And so we're officing together. There were times when he would show up with bodyguards, and there were times when he would, but sometimes he would not. So we're going out to lunch together, just the two of us in his car, and every 30 seconds I hear a beep, and I ask him what the beep was. And he said, "That's a security system." Really? I said, "What do you mean, security system?" He says, "Well, this is an armored vehicle." And it looked like a regular Buick to me. It didn't look unusual. He says, "But this is, the flooring's reinforced, the sides are reinforced, these are bulletproof windows, and the ceiling's reinforced."
I got to get me one of those.
And I said to him, "Oh, okay, how important is security to you, and why is it so important?" He says,
Because you're riding in his car.
Yeah, exactly. Well, he explains to me there was a terrorist called Abu Nidal. And it's an important name because some people have gotten the story confused and thinking it was someone else. No, it was Abu Nidal had put North on a hit list. And, and Abu Nidal was known for always getting his man, always.
Okay. Wow.
In fact, he was very patient, and it sometimes would take years. He says, "Don," he says, "just a couple of weeks ago, there were some Middle Easterners that were arrested. They had smuggled their way into the United States through Canada, and they were apprehended, and they appeared before a judge. And the judge basically allowed them to make bail." And he says, "Don, they just disappeared. No one knows where they are."
Yeah.
And he says, "I have to assume that they were coming down through Canada to here, to D.C., for me, himself."
Wow.
And so I said, "Well, wow. Well, what's the cost associated with this security?" $40,000 a month.
Oh, wow.
He spent on security. He actually had a guard shed built in his backyard. It was on the news about that guard shed. And like I said, he would show up for work oftentimes with a couple of bodyguards. I remember one morning we're greeting everybody, and we were Christians, and I hugged this guy who has on his bulletproof vest.
Oh, yeah.
My first time hugging a guy with a bulletproof vest on.
That felt different.
Yeah, that felt different. And I had to assume they were all packing, I assume.
Right.
So we went on to lunch, and we talked, and I enjoyed getting to know him. And I had the privilege of meeting his wife, and he would do things. Eventually, which was a concern of mine, he became more and more relaxed. He said to me, Nidal waited for his victims to relax, and then he would hit. And Ollie and I, we fraternized for several years. And eventually I began to work at a facility called Youth for Tomorrow. It was a home for at-risk teenage boys. something started by Joe Gibbs, who was coaching
the 49ers, right?
No, the Redskins.
Redskins. Sorry,
Yeah, he was coaching the Redskins.
Wrong coast.
Yeah, wrong coast. Doug Williams.
Yeah.
Okay.
4 touchdowns
Yeah.
in the Super Bowl.
Right,
Yeah.
Super Bowl. And so Joe was my biggest funder for just me ministering out there.
Wow.
Very, very supportive and encouraging. And I began to work for him at this youth home, eventually became the director of the youth home. Teenage boys were sent to us by judges, court appointed, as an alternative to juvenile hall. And we worked with these boys. We had up to 30 boys, and we lived on the campus. And my wife ran the school, and I ran the program. And we would hire people to be house parents.
That's awesome.
But Ali began to serve on that board, and he was just very invested in impacting the community. Very invested.
Man.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, again, Don, we loved having you here, and I mean these stories that they're very enriching and inspiring, and we can't say enough about the work you're doing in Kansas City,
Thank
and
you.
we appreciate you so much.
Thank you.
And so I'm going to turn it over to Gary for the last word.
Okay.
Well, thanks for wading in deep.
Sure.
Yes.
We really need voices to speak up and speak out, and especially voices that aren't carrying some kind of a grudge or a bitter pill, that
Right.
that if you go there with them, that's what you're going to walk away thinking about.
Right.
I love the fact that you're walking away thinking about, redemption,
Yes.
and how do we keep Christ at the center, which is
Exactly.
really what we're all about here.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So to our audience, thank you for joining in today. Don, tell people where they can find you.
Yes.
I'm with an organization called Fatherhood Foundations, and officing in downtown Kansas City, MO, New Life City Church, where I'm an associate pastor,
Yes.
17th and McGee.
Thanks for being such a good partner
Absolutely.
with us.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah,
Thank
you're
you.
one of the churches in town where every time that we ask if we can have a meeting downtown, your staff finds a way to make it happen.
Well,
so
great.
thank you so
You're
much.
so welcome.
Yeah.
So if you're joining in, I just encourage you again to subscribe, to like, to share. You're part of the way that this goes further than this table. The other way is we really want you to have your own conversations. So our hope and our prayer is that you take a deep breath, ask God to help you, and wade into the water, and you'll find out God's already there, and you'll have some good conversations.
So love your neighbor, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Courageous Conversations.
We hope you heard something that encourages you to start these conversations in your own life.
Because when we talk, listen, and learn together, we move closer to uniting people, uniting neighborhoods, and uniting KC.
And don't forget, you can find more stories, events, and resources at unitekc.org.
So until next time, go love your neighbors at all costs.